What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Abzan Amalia combo for the Pioneer format. Specifically, we're going over this deck because I believe that this is going to be one of the big players at RC Atlanta that is going to be on this weekend as of the recording of this video, and I think it's due kind of for a breakout. We've seen it putting up some pretty good results in challenges and preliminaries, and I think it's just kind of the lead up to kind of this big breakout tournament where I think it could win the whole dang thing if Rakdos and Is It Phoenix can't really contend or really even kind of adapt, I guess, to this new combo threat that is super resilient, all things considered. But of course, before we get too deep into the Amalia combo deck and we go through the ins and outs, I would appreciate it if you're not already subscribed to the channel that you consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell. It's a free, easy way to support my content. You get to see a lot of modern videos, a lot of Pioneer videos, and other longer form type videos as well. So if you want to be privy to those things, be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell, of course. If you go into the links or to the description down below, there's two links. One goes to the deck list that you see here on your screen, and the other one is to my Discord server. I would really appreciate it if you took the time, go over there and join the Discord server through the link. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at Abzan Amalia combo, which is this new deck that is all because of this new card from the Lost Caverns Ixalan set, Amalia Benavides Aguirre, and that is the only time I'm going to say that, and I'm sure it was absolutely butchered, but that's why we're going to just shorthand it to Amalia from this point on. So, Amalia is white and a black for a 2/2 legendary creature Vampire Scout with ward pay 3 life. Whenever you gain life, Amalia explores and then destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20. So it's going to be very hard to get this thing past 20 power. I mean, it's definitely doable, but you definitely want to avoid that possibility at all costs. So you are pairing Amalia with a card like Wild Growth Walker. Whenever a creature you control explores, you put a +1/+1 counter on Wild Growth Walker and you gain 3 life. So these cards will kind of bounce off each other. Amalia is going to explore, which when you resolve the explore trigger, Wild Growth Walker is going to trigger, getting a little bit bigger and gaining you 3 life, which is then going to trigger Amalia, and so on until Amalia gets 20 power, in which she will blow up all other creatures, including the Wild Growth Walker, meaning that your loop stops and you are able to hopefully attack with your Amalia. So this deck has a few ways where it can kind of like set up on turn 3, and like one way in particular where it could just win the game on like turn 3. So the ideal curve, like the dream start, would be to play a Lunarch Veteran on 1. You play an Amalia on turn 2. You end up getting a counter on it, whatever. You explore, hope maybe you find a Wild Growth Walker, maybe you find another land, so on. Who cares? Turn 3, you play a Wild Growth Walker, and you gain a life from the Lunarch Veteran because a creature you control enter the battlefield. You gain a life, which triggers Amalia, which will then trigger Wildgrowth Walker, and so on. Specifically on turn 3, I mean, if your opponent decides to like kill Lunarch Veteran, like they can't afford to kill the Amalia for whatever reason, you could just go play another Lunarch Veteran into a Wildgrowth Walker, or you could play even a Prosperous Innkeeper, to make a treasure token to kind of get like the mana back from it and then play a Wild Growth Walker. And it all still works out the same, where you are able to attack with Amalia on turn 2 or on turn 3, and more than likely win the game from there. So obviously we established the combo, like how we want to set it up and everything. So how do we go about it? Of course, like these creature combo decks, like they can kind of go in one of two ways. They can go full in on the combo, and other times they can play like this kind of toolboxy deck and then eventually combo later on. And this deck seems to kind of build into kind of playing Return to the Ranks, which is this card from like M15 that I had in my collection forever, and of course when I actually need it, I don't have it anymore. So Return to the Ranks, you can convoke it as double white and X, and you return X target creature cards with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And as you'll notice, all the creatures are 2 CMC. So one thing you can do with like an Amalia, if you combo off and get the 20 power, blow up the board, and then your opponent kills your Amalia, you can explore, because you're essentially guaranteed to look at, we'll say 10 to 15 cards with Amalia, 10 to 15 spells, because if you hit a land, you're not going to put a counter on the Amalia. So you can mill cards essentially until you find a return to the ranks. And I believe most of the time, I think it's just correct to mill to a return to the ranks. And you keep it on top, pass a turn, and then if your opponent kills the Amalia, then you're able just to on your fourth turn or fifth turn, excuse me, you're able to return to the ranks for 3, get back an Amalia, get back a Lunarch veteran or a Prosperous Innkeeper and a Wildgrowth Walker, and do it again. Or you can kind of set up these boards where you can play a bunch of dorks, and then the turn after that return to the ranks for like 5, 6, 7, 8, and bring back a bunch of these other dorks and just continue to either combo from there, if you need one creature, or just end up going wide and forcing your opponent to deal with the board as it sits. Of course, if you refuse, I guess, to get back a Wildgrowth Walker, you can just get back like Amalia, some Lunarch veterans, and like a bunch of other creatures, and you just end up gaining a ton of life. Amalia is going to get bigger. You have Voice of the Blessed, which is a card that whenever you gain life, it gets a +1/+1 counter on it, and if it has 4 more counters on it, it has Flying Vigilance, and if it has 10 or more, it has Indestructible. So like this is a creature that can get really big and really destructive, and when you have these like big return to the ranks for 4 or 5, you can actually just make this really huge and essentially making an attacker slash a blocker that is essentially impossible to get through. And with the evasion on it, you're going to be able to get through and attack your opponent down. Going on, you have cards like Quarter Calling and Collected Company. Quarter Calling is going to find a specific creature, with all of them essentially being at the most 2 CMC. You're going to be able to cord a lot of the time for these things. You're going to be able to go grab Amalia at the end step and put into play, gain a life, trigger Wildgrowth Walkers, all that, blow up the board, and then be able to attack with it when your opponent puts shields down. You're also able to cord for really any of the other pieces that you're missing, even though it makes them pretty expensive. You're paying 4 mana for like a Lunarch veteran, but being able to do it at instant speed and essentially win the game, is pretty good in my opinion. Collected Company, while you do not have the choice of what creatures or whatever creature or creatures that you hit, but you do get to look at 6 cards. This is kind of a way that you can like backdoor into the combo without necessarily having to draw it. So you like Coco on your opponent's turn. You get like an Amalia and a Lunarch veteran. You gain a ton of life. Whatever. You hopefully end up finding a Wildgrowth Walker. Maybe even just from the Collected Company, you put both into play, or off the Explore plus like a draw step and whatever. And essentially you're gonna look at like 8 to 9 cards potentially, depending on how many Lunarch veterans and Prosperous Innkeepers you have, to then kind of get to that point where you can combo and then kill your opponent, because obviously the Amalia came in from the Collected Company. So then you're able to, win the game from there, which is always a good thing, I've heard. So that's the deck in the nutshell. That's kind of like what we're focused on this build. In the mana base, you have 4 Blooming Marshes, you have 1 Boseiju, 2 Concealed Courtyard, 1 Godless Shrine, the 2 mana Confluence, 3 Overgrown Tomb, 1 Plains, 4 Rageforged Thicket, 4 Temple Garden, with the sweet new art from the Ravnica, like, re-release set or whatever the hell it is. Ravnica Remastered. The sideboard, it looks like you have some creatures that are kind of fit in this like creature toolboxy strategy. Namely, like Yasharn is kind of a weird one in the fact that like you can't get it from Return to the Ranks or Collected Company, but definitely getting to play this against like Rakdos Sacrifice and some of these other decks. Your opponents can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. You have 4 Lane on the Void for the graveyard decks, namely against like Phoenix. You just put this into play. You're able to kind of hold them off long enough to eventually like get through and win. Plus, this in particular will help you against the not fight with fire. There's like their 1 mana spell that cares about spell mastery. It deals 2, and then for an additional, if you have 2 or more instant sorceries in your graveyard, it deals 3, which is important because if you just go like Lunarch on 1, Amalia on turn 2, and you reveal a non-land card, Amalia is out of range for that card that I seemingly can't remember, even though I played a bunch with it when I was playing Phoenix. You have 1 Redain, which of course never likes to show up on these videos and stuff, but Redain essentially is going to help you against like the sacrifice matchups on the backside where it prevents 1 damage from a source. So if your opponent has like 4 4 unicyclers in play, 4 mayhem devils, if you will, and they sacrifice their things. They're going to get 4 separate triggers, and they're not going to be able to deal any damage with the mayhem devils. Of course, they're going to deal damage with the cat because it's lost life, not damage. You have Eidolon or Rhetoric, where players can cast more than one spell each turn. This also being good against Phoenix. Tutorable with Court of Calling and hittable off Collected Company. Not good with Return to the Ranks, obviously, because it costs 3 instead of 2, but definitely good enough, I think, to earn at least 1 slot when you have 8 ways of finding it, on top of just naturally drawing it as well. Voice of Resurgence for those control decks. Also, I can see this being pretty good against like Phoenix, or just like decks that want to try to interact with you on your turn. Deep Cavern Harpy enters the battlefield. You can look at an opponent's hand and you exile a non-land card from it until it leaves the battlefield. And then it also has flying and lifelink, so it can trigger the Amalia, trigger Voice of the Blessed, and is at least on the side of like evasive too. So it's going to be able to hit in at least a few times before your opponent is able to do anything about it. Haywire Might for those pesky non-creature artifact and or non-creature enchantments. Also tutorable again off of Court of Calling Collected Company, and has the benefit of getting hit off Return to the Ranks. And 3 Fatal Push. Presumably, I would say for like the mirror and stuff like that. I'm sure some of this other stuff's for the mirror too, but like that's kind of what I would guess is just cheap ways of interacting with kind of what the deck is doing. And that is Abzan Amalia combo for the Pioneer format. I had said in the beginning of this video, I expect this deck to do very well, and I don't know if I said this in the video, but I think the more I've like thought about it and I've kind of sat on it, the more I think that this deck has the potential to just take down the whole event. I mean, it does something very powerful in just being able to win the game on turn 3 if your opponent's not able to interact properly. On top of that, too, even if you blow up the board and your opponent deals with your threat, you have this kind of emergency backup plan to where you can just get everything back with Return to the Ranks and do it all over again, and keep forcing your opponent to have interaction and just like keep going until you hit these Return to the Ranks, or not even really caring if you've already drawn the Return to the Ranks, so that you can actually bring everything back, on top of again having that utility to where you could just play this after your board gets wiped by your own creature to bring it back and reset it up. It's it's great. This deck is beautiful in a way. I drew some comparisons with Yawgmoth in how this deck kind of operates and how some of these creature combo decks work. And when we see like Yawgmoth in Modern, where you have some of these toolbox creatures, but then like a lot of them also feed into the game plan of kind of stalling out the game until you can set up your infinite win con, but then also can backdoor into just a win because like the pieces are so good. And we kind of see that with like Voice of the Blessed kind of pairing well with, cards like Lunarch Veteran and Prosperous Innkeeper, you wanting to hit those cards, and then Dina as well. Like the more that you stack up on Innkeepers and Lunarch Veterans, the better Dinas and Soul of the Blessed and even Amelia's get as well. Kind of leaning into this little like life gain party here. Whatever the correct build is, I'm not sure. I definitely like Extraction Specialist. I like this deck playing, 4, 4, and 4. Super easy. I think it makes sideboarding a heck of a lot easier when you know that your opponent's going to bring in Graveyard Hate. You just get rid of Return to the Ranks. You still have your Collected Companies, a Court of Callings. If your opponent's going to stop you from searching Library, well, then like Return to the Ranks, Collected Company, so on. There's just so many different avenues that this deck can go, and because of all the ways it can set up its own combo, well, either like when it is comboing or when it's trying to find the correct pieces and everything, it just has so much resiliency and redundancy. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below what Pioneer deck do you want to see next. And of course, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you see more videos like this and other modern content as well. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.